When I first started gardening, probably the most difficult thing for me was the learning curve that it took starting plants from seed. I originally started most of my plants using starts or baby plants that I bought at the store. The second biggest learning curve was transplanting. So today I'm going to share with you the secrets that I have, 8 tips to transplanting your seedlings successfully every single time. The first biggest transplanting tip I can give you is hardening off. And hardening off just means getting the plants that may be inside your home acclimated to the weather outside. If you're in a northern climate, you're trying to acclimate them to colder temperatures typically. Or here in the south, we're trying to acclimate them to hotter temperatures. So when you bring them out of the house, you're going to bring them out at the time of day closest to your inside temperature. So if you're keeping your house at 70 degrees and say you're up north, midday to 4 p.m. is probably going to be the hottest time of the day. That will be closest to the temperatures in your house. You can start them off at those times. Now here in the south, I'm in Central Florida, it is very, very hot from noon to 4. You do not want to be bringing your plants out at noon to 4. It's 90 degrees. But nighttime temperatures are actually in the 70s, which is closest to our temperature inside. So you bring them out at night, let them stay overnight and get some of those morning hour sunlight, and then bring them back inside for the hottest time of the day. Once you've been bringing them in and out and they seem to be handling it well for about 5 to 7 days, then try leaving them out for the full day and night and see how they look in the morning. If they look super stressed, if they're getting kind of wilty, dropping leaves, those kinds of things, quickly bring them back inside, give them a couple days to recuperate, and then start that whole process over again. Usually what I like to do here in the south when we're dealing with the hot temperatures is I will put them in shade those first couple days where they're out all day long, and then a couple days after that I move them here. Yes, it is kind of a long process, which is actually one of the reasons why I start all my plants outdoors. You don't have to deal with hardening off. But I know that's not always an option for people who live in maybe colder climates and you can't do that. But there is something called like winter sowing where you create like a greenhouse effect over it using things like milk jugs or soda bottles or whatever to put over the seedling to kind of get it a little bit warmer in there for that seedling, so that you can start them outdoors. Or winter sowing where you put the seeds down and you just wait for the perfect temperatures to hit to cause them to sprout. Now the second tip is when to transplant them. So this is about as young as you want to transplant seedlings. So the first thing I look for is on the bottom here, I want to see, let me get it up close here. You want to see if you could see any roots coming out. So roots on the bottom mean that the roots have extended down and that this is a mature enough plant to go out into the garden. The other way to tell is to count the leaves. So in this particular one right here, you can see 4 sets of leaves. So there's the 2 little bottom leaves, which are these little guys right here. They look a little bit different from the top leaves. And that's because these are seed leaves. These right here, these top 2, those are true leaves. They look a little bit different. The seed leaves are always the first 2 leaves that come out of a seedling, and they look different than the mature leaves. But the true leaves are the first set of leaves that will be the type of leaf that the plant has when it's in its mature state. Once you get 2 of these, you can technically transplant them this tiny. Although I will say, unless you have a very pressing reason why you need to get them out this young, maybe wait for you to get 4 sets of true leaves. That's generally a much stronger, healthier seedling, and they're going to do better at the transplanting process. I'm about to go on vacation, so these guys need to get in the ground. So I got 2 leaves, they're going in the bed. Tip number 3 is going to be waiting for the perfect day. And the perfect day generally looks like a day that is nice and cloudy. Maybe you're going to have rain in the forecast, something that is going to slowly acclimate them to this new space. Another option you could do is actually put your trays in the space for a couple days just so they can kind of get used to it. If you're living down here in the south where I am, where it is very, very hot, even if you have hardened them off, sometimes transplanting them at midday is going to kill them. It is going to really give them some significant challenges while they're young. So the best option is to transplant them towards the end of the day. Say 5, 6, 7 o'clock at night. If you transplant them at the end of the day, they have a whole evening to kind of get used to it, and then they get that nice morning sun coming in, and it's nice and gentle, and it's not like super extreme like they will get to when they get at noon. Now they may still struggle a little bit, but they'll have the best chances if you put them in the ground at night. Now this does not necessarily apply to my winter gardeners. Night is your hardest time on your seedlings. So what you want to do is actually put them in as early as possible in the morning. Tip number 4 is going to be how many seedlings you're transplanting. So each one of my cells has 2 seedlings in each cell. The reason I like to do this is that when you're transplanting, if one of them gets damaged from a cutworm, a snail, a slug, any kind of bug, you have the other one as an option. You don't have to start more seeds. You know, you don't lose the plant entirely. So I always leave 2. And then after I see that they've gotten about, I don't know, about a foot tall, depending on the plant, but about a foot tall, I will go ahead and clip one of them. I'll choose whichever one's my favorite or whichever one looks more healthy. But at this stage, you want the best bet that one of these are going to survive. So putting 2 in is a better option. I know some people like to clip it down to 1, but really honestly, I saw no difference between putting 1 in the ground versus putting 2 in the ground when they're this small. They grow just the same speed. It's when they get much bigger, above that 1 foot mark, or 4 to 6 weeks in age, that you really start to notice a decline in their speed of growth when they're planted too closely together. But at this stage, you still got a couple weeks before you have to make a decision. Tip number 5 is going to be fertilizer. You're going to want to put some kind of fertilizer in the hole, especially if you don't regularly amend your beds. They're going to need to be fed. I like several different products. I hate to even promote just one. This is one that I use, Dr. Earth. It's really good. It's got a 4:6:3 NPK ratio, which is just nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium. Sometimes I mix that up. Nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium. This one is organic and all natural from natural products. I like that. Espama also has a really good one, and then Down to Earth has a really good one. You want to focus on granular, not necessarily liquid fertilizers. Liquid fertilizers are great when a plant is struggling and they need like immediate food, but these guys, they got a little bit longer before they actually need immediate food. So using a granular is better because it's just going to last longer. It's going to feed them longer. Liquid fertilizer kind of runs right through the plant really quickly. So we're going to shift these over. I'm going to show you exactly how much you need to put in here. So let's say we're going to put a plant right here, which we will. I'm just going to create like a little hole right there. I have a little cup measure here. I pulled about 1/4 of a cup. I'm only going to use about half that. You don't need much. So that's probably maybe 2 tablespoons. And then we're just going to mix that in a little bit. Tip number 6 is getting these guys out of this tray. If you're new to transplanting, this is probably going to be the hardest thing. I really strongly encourage you that when you get into starting from seed, that you find yourself a good tray. These are Epic Gardening's trays. I like them. One, they're reusable. They're very hard, like plastic. They're going to last like to the end of time. I can tell, like, they are very, very sturdy. But the part that I absolutely love about them are 2 things. They have these slits, which are just like air layering or air rooting. It allows the roots to kind of hit these edges and spray out and grow around those edges instead of circling inside. And the other thing, the most important, is this little hole right here. This little hole right here allows you to stick your finger in there and push the seedling out without damaging the roots. You see how easy that was? And then I can just take this whole seedling and drop it into my little hole that I created. Now, if you don't have these types of trays and you're just using like flats from the store, you can squeeze the bottom of them. I used to use a spoon. I would take a spoon and kind of go along the edge and try to pull them out. I still damaged a lot of the roots, but that is one way to get them out. They are very hard to get out the smaller the tray is. I would not go any smaller than this. I know that they make trays smaller than this, but the hard part comes when trying to get them out of those trays. If there's not a hole, a very large hole on the bottom, you're not going to be able to get them out. Or if you do get them out, you've probably like really messed up their roots and they're super unhappy plants at that moment. If you're interested in these, I'll put a link down in my description so that you can check them out. Tip number 7 is going to look a little bit scary, because you're going to be quite aggressive with the seedling. But I want to show you, you have to make good contact between the seedling and the soil and the fertilizer underneath it. Let me pull you in close. So we've dug our hole right there. We're going to put a little bit of our fertilizer in there. And now we're going to get our next seedling out. So let's pull this one out. Now, when you put them in, you kind of want them to be at ground level. These are brassicas or broccolis, so they can actually be buried a little bit higher up. But most plants, you bury the cell at ground level. This one I can bury a little bit lower, so I'm doing that. But here's the part that's gonna look a little crazy. You wanna make good contact with the soil below. So what you wanna do is take a couple of your hand or your fingers and push. Oh, it's good contact. You want them to not have like a huge amount of air pockets in there. You want them to be nice and pressed to the ground. And that's all there is to it. You just push some soil on top. I usually like to try to like get some soil to where they kind of stand up a little bit better, and then that's it. Now let's get the rest of this one in. Tip number 8 is probably the most important tip, and that's going to be water your seedlings in. These seedlings have been babied for weeks. They're in these trays, they're getting the perfect amount of light, the perfect temperatures, the perfect water, and here we are putting them out in a not so ideal situation, trying to get them used to it. The least that we can do for them is to give them plenty of water so that way they can handle this immense transition that they're going through. So never skip this step. Let me show you how much I do. I water the seedling and then I water all the way around it so that anywhere where its little roots are going to go, it's going to encounter a nice amount of water. You're going to want to come out and check on them every single day for the first 5 days, 4 or 5 days, and stick your finger in the soil. Make sure that not just the top is wet, but underneath is wet as well. And if they do need it, definitely give them more water. I typically will give them water every other day for those first 4 or 5 days. Even if it kind of feels moist, I'm giving them water, whatever they need. If you learned something new today, make sure to head down to the comments and leave me a note. Or if you have tips for the community of things that you have done to help your transplanting process go better, make sure to leave those too so that we can all learn from each other. Happy gardening, guys.